Hello, Prime Minister. It's great to be with you here today.
On Facebook Live.
On Facebook Live, like almost as good as a face-to-face visit. I had one of those last week with the Foreign Minister.
I know. I saw. I wasn't there, obviously, but I saw the Facebook video that you posted.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. You and Julie were eloquent and magnificent, of course. But the young girls.
Oh, the girls are amazing, and it had such a buzz to it.
Yeah.
We had like over 300 girls and parents in a morning tea as well, and they were all, we had a lot of aspiring foreign ministers. You and Julie inspired them. Well,
and that was just wonderful role models. So just great leadership.
Look, and the principal, speaking of great leadership, she was absolutely fantastic. The leader defines the culture, and you could just see it in the girls, the enthusiasm and their warmth and their embrace and their willingness to ask really good questions. It was a great day. Avala's great.
Our school's funding model, the new schools funding program in the budget, $18 billion of additional funding over the decade, and every school in your electorate is going to receive increased funding.
Absolutely. And it goes from schools like Avala, and the reason I was so passionate and really genuinely happy about the Avala visit is a lot of the girls there come from families like mine, not necessarily not wealthy families or anything like that, just hard-working people of immigrant heritage.
Sure.
And they just, aspire to their goals and follow their dream. Other schools like Kunang Secondary College, which in the past might have missed out because it wasn't one of the, special deals, that I met with that principal, and that is another great school, about 1,000 students.
And there'll be an increase of $7.7 million in Commonwealth funding to Kunang Secondary College over the next 10 years. So it's another one of your schools.
Absolutely.
They're all receiving additional funding.
Yeah. And I'm finding...
And it's needs-based.
Absolutely. And it's the needs-based...
Transparent and fair.
Piece, needs-based, and the transparency and the immediacy of the transparency that people really love. From parents to students to teachers. I was at Box Hill High School with Burmo a few weeks ago, and someone asked about the funding for that particular school, and Burmo got the estimator out.
Yeah, it's great.
We were able to tell them straight away.
You can look it up
absolutely.
On your iPhone.
I know, it was great.
Or smartphone of your choice.
Yeah. But the other thing that I'm really, I think the Australian population generally, across the board in Australia, I've often said this, and I said it the other night at a volunteers night, if there's one thing that makes me really proud to be an Australian, if I had to say there was one thing, it's that Australians always help those in need.
Yeah.
And so I'm particularly enamoured about the NDIS funding, that the fact that can give comfort to the thousands of people who are affected both indirectly and directly by disability.
It is a great national enterprise.
Yeah.
It's an exercise of practical love, supporting people with severe and permanent disabilities. But you've got to pay for it.
Yes.
And what we have done in the budget is commit to increasing the Medicare levy from 2019 by 0.5%, and that's timed to when the NDIS is fully ramped up, and that will mean that we will be fully funding the Commonwealth share of the National Disability Insurance Scheme. And the tragedy of all this is that the Labor Party is not supporting it.
Yeah.
They talk about the importance of the National Disability Insurance Scheme, and of course it was introduced under a Labor government, although with absolute bipartisan support.
Yes.
So in that sense, it is a bipartisan project. But surely Labor would recognise the importance of fully funding it.
Absolutely.
And that we will continue to make the case for that, and I'm confident we can achieve support in the Senate.
And I think it just goes to the integrity of the Australian people, because there's overwhelming support to fully fund it.
There is.
In the way we've described in the budget. And
no one likes paying more tax, plainly, but this is a national disability
Absolutely.
insurance scheme. So
Yeah.
we all benefit from it,
Yeah.
one way or another, and it's fair that everyone pays for it
Absolutely.
through the Medicare levy,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
extra 0.5%.
Yeah. And the other real buzz in my electorate is in the small business sector.
Yeah.
I've got, as you know, Prime Minister, I've got one of the most diverse electorates in Australia, and there are over 15,000 people who, like my parents, when they first started, are building their life in small business. And small business is the backbone of our country, and from the small cafe shops to my local hairdresser, you see how hard these people work in terms of their family business, and it often starts with a family.
And they must be very encouraged by the tax cuts that we've delivered.
Absolutely are, because they the tax cuts, the cutting of the bureaucracy, because when you're running a small business, and the instant asset write-off, all those things. Can you talk a bit more about that?
The critical thing that we have to recognise is, as you said, Julia, and you understand this as a businesswoman, that it is small business in particular that drives investment and employment. It's the most dynamic part of the economy, and we are supporting it. So we are providing a tax cut for small and medium businesses, starting off in the financial year just ending, for businesses with turnovers of under $10 million. Next year it'll move up to businesses of under $25 million, the year after that to $50 million. And there is on my recollection, there's nearly 20,000 small businesses in your electorate, that from very, very small ones to larger ones with high turnovers, that will benefit from this tax cut.
Right.
So that's more money for them to invest, more money for them to hire somebody.
That's right.
And we know that if you cut business taxes, you get more investment, more productivity and more employment.
Yeah.
And of course the instant asset write-off for the small businesses under $10 million, that means they can buy something for a piece of plant. It might be a coffee maker, it might be an oven, it might be
That's
a
right.
vehicle
Yeah.
for $20,000 and write it off instantly. That is a
Absolutely.
big encouragement to get in, make those investments that of course enable them to grow their business.
Absolutely. And as you say, from small businesses, bigger businesses can grow. And there was one that I visited with the Treasurer immediately after the budget, and it was a classic example of a small business that started with a turnover of about 4 million and has grown to, close to 40 million. Two university biotech students who created this business, who now employ 100 people, and they're creating medical devices, innovative devices.
There you
they're
have it, jobs and growth
across the world. Absolutely, classic example. Prime Minister, just two more issues I just wanted to talk about, and one is going back to the importance of helping those who are socially or intellectually disabled in terms of our education reforms, and the fact that they are being well accommodated as well as part of the Gonski vision and plan based on the needs-based. And another classic school in my electorate is the Aurora School.
Yep.
That school, that's why I'm really passionate about the needs-based. It's sector-blind, but it is truly and genuinely a needs-based funding model, and that's why I've had the overwhelming support about that. So,
that's the goal, and it is exactly as David Gonski envisioned it, to be sector blind, as you say, to be needs based and consistent and transparent.
Yes.
And that's why David Gonski has given the policy his endorsement.
Yeah. And Prime Minister, just to finish on a sad note, but a note of security and reassurance to the Australian people. Sadly, over the weekend, the parents of the victim of the Brighton siege mourned and grieved the death of their son in Mount Waverley, and this is where, as under our principles and our philosophy, family is the first priority, and it doesn't matter no matter what your heritage, that is our priority. And the Chinese community, which are a significant population of Chinese people in in my electorate, and they all banded together. There were, you know, hundreds of people supporting these people through the, you know, nothing any parent ever wants to contemplate, the loss of a child. So could you just talk about our national security plan? Because I know the president of the Chinese Association said, you know, they are deeply sorrowful and sad about this, but they're not scared because they're reassured by our strong stance on security.
Well, firstly, Julia, our hearts go out to the family of Kai Ho, the victim of the Brighton siege, murdered by a terrorist who was out on parole and should never have been out on parole. We have seen Australians killed in terrorist events in Melbourne, Kai Ho. We've seen in London Bridge, 2 young women, and of course a young girl killed in Baghdad. We've seen Australians injured in London in the terrorist attack there on London Bridge. The truth is that we can never be cowed or bow to terrorism, and we never will be.
Yeah.
Your community is, like all Australians, absolutely resolute in defying the terrorists. And my government, the Australian government, our agencies, our Defence Force, our intelligence services, our security agencies, our police, every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, we are working to keep Australians safe. And I updated the House yesterday on new measures that we are taking to make ensure Australians are safe. We're working with the states and territories on that. We had a COAG meeting discussing that on Friday in Hobart. And one of the changes that the states and territories have agreed to at my request is to ensure that where a person applies for bail or parole and they have a history of support for or connection to or links to terrorism, then there will be a presumption against them getting bail or parole. Violent offenders, like the killer in the Brighton siege, who have links to terrorism, should be behind bars. And every day someone like that is behind bars is a better day. So at every level, whether it is in terms of our intelligence activities, our work in the Middle East with the Defence Force, destroying Daesh, ISIL, and their so-called caliphate, defying the terrorists everywhere, at home and abroad, we are determined to keep Australians safe. So you, as the federal member for Chisholm, you can reassure your community we will leave no stone unturned in our efforts to secure Australians' safety.
Thank you, Prime Minister, and thank you for meeting with me here today. It was a great event, and it's, as I said at the start, not as good as you being out there. I'm sure you'll get the same rockstar welcome that the Foreign Minister got when you do come out. So, but thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you, and it's been a good discussion. We've ended it on a sad note of mourning for one of your constituents who was killed in the Brighton siege, and we grieve with his family and the community.
Absolutely.
But we also stand with them absolutely resolute
in
defence of our safety.
Thank you, Prime Minister.